Emily wasn't looking for love that night. She was just helping her best friend organize a local art charity event in downtown Seattle. The place buzzed with chatter, music, and soft laughter echoing through the glass hall. Emily moved from one corner to another, making sure everything ran smoothly. Never noticing the man quietly watching her from across the room, Daniel stood near one of the paintings. Hands in his pockets, his calm eyes tracing every small detail. He wasn't like the others who tried to impress or network. There was a stillness about him, a kind of quiet confidence that drew attention without asking for it. He looked like someone who had lived through a lot and learned to be content with silence. He wasn't young, not in the way the rest of the crowd was. His hair carried streaks of silver, and fine lines shaped the corners of his eyes, but they only made him look wiser. Not older. Emily finally approached him when she realized he was one of the main sponsors of the event. "You must be Daniel Lawson," she said, offering a polite smile. "I'm Emily Brooks. I helped coordinate the show tonight." He turned toward her, his expression softening the moment he saw her. "So, you're the reason everything looks so perfect," he said. His voice was deep, measured with a hint of warmth that made her pause. She laughed lightly. "Perfect might be too generous, but thank you." For a moment, they just stood there, two strangers in a crowded room, sharing a quiet spark neither of them expected. Emily noticed how attentive he was when she spoke, as if he wasn't just listening to her words but also to the pauses between them. When she told him about the artists and the community they were supporting, he seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions instead of polite ones. "Do you paint?" he asked after a while. Emily shook her head. "I try, but I'm better at organizing things than creating them." "I doubt that," he said with a small smile. "You have the look of someone who feels deeply. That usually makes a good artist." His words caught her off guard. It wasn't a flirtation, it felt like he saw something in her that she hadn't noticed herself. For the rest of the evening, she found her eyes drifting back to him. Whenever she did, he was already looking her way by the time the event ended. Most guests had left, and only a few people remained, cleaning up or chatting quietly. Emily was helping stack chairs when Daniel approached her again. He handed her a small thank you card with a donation receipt inside. "For next year's event," he said, "you're doing something good here." She smiled and thanked him, tucking the card away. But when she looked up again, there was something in his gaze, kind but distant, as if he was holding back. He looked like he wanted to say something but chose not to. "Did you enjoy yourself tonight?" she asked, breaking the silence. He nodded. "More than I expected. I don't usually stay long at events like this. But tonight?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Tonight was different." Emily didn't know what he meant, but her heart reacted before her mind did. There was a warmth in his tone, an unspoken connection she couldn't explain. Before she could respond, someone called her name from across the hall. She turned to wave, and when she looked back, Daniel was already putting on his coat. "Maybe I'll see you at the next event," she said quickly. "Maybe," he replied with a polite nod. "Take care, Emily." He walked away, leaving her with an odd ache in her chest. It wasn't sadness exactly, but something close to it, a quiet longing for a man she barely knew. That night, she drove home. She couldn't stop thinking about him. His calm voice, the way his eyes softened when he smiled, the gentle distance he kept, as if he didn't trust himself to get too close. There was something about him that pulled her in, something real and steady, unlike the men she'd dated before. He didn't try to impress her. He didn't need to. For the next few days, she kept replaying that evening in her mind, convincing herself it was nothing. Just a polite conversation, she told herself. But deep down, she knew better. There had been something in the way he looked at hers, something honest, something rare. Across town, Daniel sat in his quiet apartment, still thinking about her. He hadn't expected to meet anyone that night, especially not someone who made him forget, even for a few hours. How long it had been since he'd truly connected with another person. He'd told himself years ago that love was something he no longer needed. Life had become about work, books, and quiet evenings. He'd grown comfortable with solitude. But now, as he remembered the spark in Emily's eyes, that comfort felt empty. He wanted to reach out to see her again. Yet he stopped himself. She was too young, too full of light and possibility. He was at a stage in life where people looked back, not forward. She deserved someone who could match her pace. Not someone who'd already lived most of his story still. Something inside him refused to let her go completely. A week later, Emily found his business card inside the donation envelope he'd given her. She hadn't noticed it before. His handwriting was neat, the kind that belonged to someone who still wrote letters instead of quick texts. On the back, he had scribbled a simple note. "Thank you for reminding me what warmth feels like." She read it twice, her heart fluttering in a way she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't a love note, it was something deeper. A glimpse into his guarded heart. She thought about calling him, but she hesitated. She didn't want to seem too forward. Instead, she kept the card on her desk, glancing at it now and then, wondering if he was thinking about her too. And he was. Every night, Daniel would find himself replaying her laughter in his head, remembering how alive he felt around her. But with every thought came doubt. She wouldn't want someone like me, he told himself. Not when there are so many others closer to her age, her world. Neither of them knew it yet. But that night had already changed the course of both their lives. Emily thought she'd just met a kind man with gentle eyes. Daniel thought he'd met someone far too good to ever look at him that way. But fate had other plans that would quietly weave their paths together again, when they least expected it. And though neither dared to admit it out loud, both were already thinking the same thing. They wanted to see each other again. It had been 3 weeks since the art event, and Emily still thought about Daniel more often than she liked to admit. She told herself it was curiosity, just wondering how he was, if he ever thought about her too. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just that. There had been something in his eyes that night, something she couldn't forget. She checked her phone sometimes, hoping for a message that never came. One Saturday afternoon, decided to spend a few quiet hours at her favorite bookstore downtown. The place smelled like old paper and coffee, her kind of peace. As she walked past the history section, a familiar voice spoke from behind her. "I didn't expect to find you here," Daniel said, smiling softly. Emily turned, and for a moment, it felt like the room tilted. "Daniel," she said, surprised but happy. "What are you doing here?" "I've come here a lot," he replied. "It's my weekend escape." They stood there, both a little awkward at first, both pretending not to be as glad as they were. Then Daniel picked up a book from the shelf and handed it to her. "This one's good," he said. "You'll like it." That simple gesture broke the tension. They started talking, first about books, then about everything else: work, the city, the weather, life. There was something effortless about it. Emily felt like she could tell him anything without being judged. Daniel, in turn, found himself smiling more than he had in months. When they realized it was already evening, Daniel hesitated before saying, "Would you like to grab some coffee before you go?" "I'd love to," she said. They walked to a nearby cafe. The rain had just started, painting the streets with reflections of city lights. Inside, they found a small corner table by the window. It was quiet there, with soft music playing in the background. Daniel ordered black coffee. Emily ordered her usual vanilla latte. For hours, they talked like old friends. She told him about how she'd moved to Seattle after college, chasing her dream job in event planning. He shared stories from his younger years, his first job, the small apartment he rented when he was 25, how he built his company from scratch. His voice carried calmness, the kind that comes from surviving storms. Emily noticed the tiny details, the way his eyes softened when he listened, how he smiled only when something truly amused him, not out of politeness. She felt safe with him, and that feeling scared her a little. Outside, the drizzle turned into rain. When they finally left, Daniel took off his jacket and handed it to her. "You'll get cold," he said. She laughed lightly. "You'll get colder." "Fine," he said, gently placing it over her shoulders. "You'll need it more." She looked up at him, smiling. "You're very old-fashioned." He nodded. "Maybe, but I like to think kindness doesn't go out of style." That line stayed with her the entire way home. When Daniel dropped her off, they stood by her car for a moment. The air was cool, the rain just a mist now. He looked at her like he wanted to say something important. "You're easy to talk to," he finally said. "It's been a long time since I've had a conversation like this." "Then we should do it again," Emily said without hesitation. He hesitated as if weighing something in his mind. "Maybe," he said softly. "But you're young, Emily. You have so much ahead of you. I don't want to be a distraction." Her smile faded. A distraction. He sighed. "You deserve someone closer to your world. I'm at a different place in life." Before she could reply, he gave her a polite smile and wished her good night. She stood there, watching his car disappear down the road, her heart heavy with confusion. That night, Emily lay awake thinking about him. His kindness, his laughter, the way he listened. She didn't understand why he was trying to push her away. He wasn't wrong about their age difference, but she didn't care about that. She cared about how he made her feel calm, seen, and understood. Something she hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, Daniel sat at his kitchen table, staring at his untouched cup of tea. He couldn't stop thinking about Hertha, way she looked at him like he wasn't just another middle-aged man. She made him feel alive again, and that scared him. He'd spent years building walls around his heart, telling himself love was behind him. But now, those walls were shaking, and he didn't know if he had the courage to let them fall. The next few days passed in silence. Emily waited, but he didn't call. She thought about reaching out first, but pride and doubt held her back. Maybe he really didn't want to see her again. Maybe he was trying to make it easier for both of them. Then one evening, as she was leaving her office, she found a small envelope under her car's windshield wiper. Her name was written in Daniel's neat handwriting. Inside, there was a folded piece of paper. "You once said you liked old-fashioned things. So here's an old-fashioned invitation. Coffee again? Same place. If you're free." "D," she smiled, her heart racing. That Friday, they met again. This time, the conversation was even easier. The awkwardness from before was gone. They talked, laughed, shared small pieces of themselves. Daniel told her about his failed marriage, not in bitterness, but with quiet honesty. Emily shared how she had lost herself in a long relationship that ended badly, how she was finally learning to trust again. When she told him that, he looked at her for a long time and said softly, "You deserve someone who values that trust," she replied, "and you deserve someone who doesn't judge you by the years you've lived." He smiled almost painfully and looked away. "That sounds nice. But sometimes life doesn't work like that." Emily didn't argue, but in her heart, she knew she was falling for him. Not because of his age, but because of his soul. Later that evening, when he dropped her off again, he stayed in the car a moment longer. "Emily," he said quietly, "you make it very hard to do the right thing." "What's the right thing?" she asked softly. He smiled sadly. "Not wanting something that could hurt you later." Before she could answer, he leaned forward and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered for a second, then he pulled back, almost as if he'd caught himself breaking a rule. "Good night, Emily," he whispered. She stepped out, her heart pounding. She watched him drive away, knowing something had changed between them. He was trying to protect her from something she didn't need protecting from his own fear. That night, she sat by her window, the city lights glowing below, thinking about him. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't done with Daniel Lawson. Not yet. And somewhere across the city, Daniel was thinking the same thing. Wondering how long he could keep pretending that he didn't already care more than he should. He thought he was saving her from heartbreak. But what he didn't realize was that she'd already decided his age didn't scare her. What scared her was the thought of losing him before they even had a chance. Days passed after their last meeting, and though both Emily and Daniel kept busy, neither could stop thinking about the other. Their connection had grown stronger, yet Daniel's fear held him back. He replied to her messages politely, kept his words short, never letting the conversation go too deep. Emily noticed it, but she didn't push him. She understood he was protecting himself, though she didn't understand why he needed to protect her. One Saturday morning, Emily texted him, asking if he'd like to join her and some friends on a weekend hike. It wasn't romantic, just a friendly group outing. He almost said no. He stared at the message for 10 minutes, thinking of excuses. He didn't belong in her world, not among her young, energetic friends. But something in him wanted to go, even if just to see her smile again. Finally, he typed back, "Sure, I'd like that." When the day arrived, the weather was perfect, crisp air, clear skies, a trail lined with pine trees and wildflowers. Emily greeted him with a bright smile. "You came," she said. He smiled awkwardly. "I said I would, didn't I?" Her friends welcomed him kindly, but Daniel still felt out of place. They laughed loudly, moved quickly up the trail, talked about new movies and weekend plans, things that didn't fit his rhythm anymore. He lagged behind at first, feeling like an outsider. But Emily stayed close, slowing her pace to match his. They talked too much. She joked softly, and he smiled, grateful for her understanding. As they climbed higher, their conversation turned quiet and personal. She asked about his favorite places to visit, and he told her about a small cabin by a lake he used to visit when he was younger. "I stopped going," he said. "It's hard to enjoy things alone." Emily looked at him. "Then maybe it's time to go again with someone who wants to be there." He met her gaze briefly before looking away. Her words touched something inside him he'd kept buried. He wanted to believe her. But the years between them stood like a wall he didn't know how to cross. By noon, they reached the top of the ridge. The view stretched endlessly, the sky open and wide, the forest below glowing in shades of green. Everyone took pictures, but Daniel just stood there, quietly watching. Emily walked over and handed him a bottle of water. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" She said, "Yes," he replied, but he wasn't looking at the view. They stood side by side. A silence between them that said more than words could. She could feel his hesitation, the battle inside him between wanting and pulling away. As the group started heading back down, Daniel spoke softly. "You're kind, Emily, but you don't see the whole picture." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He sighed, eyes still on the trail. "I'm older. My life is different. I've already lived most of what you're just starting. You'll wake up one day and realize you want something else, someone else. I don't want to be that mistake." Emily stopped walking, making him turn to face her. "You keep saying that like it's a fact," she said, her voice steady. "But maybe it's just your fear talking." He didn't answer. He looked at her for a long moment before saying quietly, "You'll understand one day." Then he walked ahead, leaving her standing there with frustration and heartbreak twisting in her chest. That night, Emily sat on her porch, replaying every word he said. She wasn't angry, just hurt that he couldn't see what she saw in him. He thought age was a wall, but to her it was nothing compared to the comfort and honesty he gave her. She had dated men her age before, but none had his depth, his steadiness. None had made her feel this safe. Daniel, meanwhile, sat alone in his apartment, unable to focus on anything. He told himself he'd done the right thing, kept his distance, stopped it before it could hurt either of them. But the truth was, the silence felt worse than any mistake. He missed her laughter, her warmth, the way she looked at him like he wasn't invisible. He hadn't felt that alive in years. A few days later, Emily sent him a short message. "I don't care about the years between us. I just care that I can talk to you." He read it several times, his heart tightening. He didn't reply right away. He couldn't. What could he say that wouldn't sound selfish? He was afraid of giving her a life that might feel limited, afraid she'd one day resent him for it. But Emily wasn't the type to give up easily. She invited him again the following week to a small local art fair. No big crowd, she promised. Just a few people and some good coffee. This time, he went. They walked together through small booths filled with handmade crafts and paintings. Emily teased him when he admired a wooden sculpture of a bird. "You've got good taste," she said. He smiled. "I always liked things that took time to make." Her reply was soft. "So do I." For the rest of the afternoon, Daniel relaxed. They laughed, shared snacks, and walked under the autumn trees. For a little while, he forgot about everything that scared him. But later, as they sat on a park bench watching families and couples pass by, the doubt crept back in. "You're going to meet someone closer to your age," he said quietly. "Someone who can give you everything I can't." Emily turned to him, confused. "Why do you keep saying that? Do you think love comes with an age limit?" He looked down, his voice low. "It's not about a number. It's about time. You have years ahead, dreams to chase, things to experience. I don't want to hold you back." She took a slow breath, trying not to cry. "You don't hold me back, Daniel. You steady me." He couldn't look at her. He wanted to believe it. The fear inside him was louder than her words. When he drove her home that evening, the ride was quiet. At her door, she finally said, "You keep thinking I'll stop wanting you. But maybe you're the one who doesn't think you deserve to be wanted." Her words hit him like a truth he'd avoided for too long. He tried to speak, but no words came. She smiled sadly, touched his arm, and whispered, "When you're ready to stop running from this, you'll know where to find me." She went inside, leaving him standing there in the quiet that night. Daniel sat in his living room, staring at nothing. Emily's voice echoed in his mind. He realized she wasn't the one afraid he was. He feared being loved again because it meant risking pain, risking loss. He feared that she'd see the cracks in him and walk away. But deep down, small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, he was wrong about her. Maybe she saw those cracks and loved him because of them, as he looked out the window at the city lights. He knew one thing for certain. She wasn't like anyone he'd ever met. And if he didn't face his fears soon, he might lose her forever. The days after their last conversation were quiet. Emily didn't reach out, and neither did Daniel. She told herself she'd said enough, that it was his turn to decide. Still, every night she caught herself checking her phone, hoping for a message that never came. Her heart felt heavy, not with anger, but with sadness for a man who didn't realize how deeply she cared. Daniel tried to move on with his routine. He worked, read, and kept himself busy. But everything reminded him of her: the smell of coffee, the sound of laughter from a nearby cafe, even the rain tapping against his window. He thought avoiding her would protect them both, but instead it left him feeling emptier than before. One evening, as he sat alone at his kitchen table, he saw the note she had once written him. "I don't care about the years between us. I just care that I can talk to you." The simplicity of it broke him. He realized he'd been pushing away the one person who saw him for who he truly was. The next day, Emily had just come home from work when she found herself pacing, restless. She didn't plan it, but before she knew it, she was in her car, driving toward Daniel's house. She told herself she just wanted to talk, no drama, no tears, just honesty. When he opened the door, he looked surprised, almost speechless. "Emily, is everything okay?" She nodded, trying to steady her voice. "No, not really," she said. "I can't keep pretending this doesn't hurt. You keep pulling away, and I keep letting you. But it's breaking me, Daniel." He looked down, guilt filling his expression. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said softly. "I just thought maybe you'd realize this isn't fair to you." "What's not fair?" she said. "Stepping closer is that you won't even let yourself believe I know what I want." He turned away, rubbing the back of his neck. "You'll regret it one day. You'll want a family, more time, more years. I can't give you that. I don't want you to look back and see me as a mistake." Emily's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed calm. "You're not listening to me. I don't want a perfect story. I want a real one. And you're part of it, whether you believe it or not." Daniel met her eyes, his expression torn between love and fear. "You really think this can work? You really think my age doesn't matter?" She took a slow step forward. "I don't see your age, Daniel. I see you, the man who listens when I talk, who makes me feel safe, who looks at me like I matter. That's what I care about. That's what I want." Her words hung in the air, steady and raw. For a long moment, Daniel couldn't speak. He'd spent months convincing himself she deserved someone else. But standing there, Seeing the truth in her eyes, he realized he had been wrong all along. She didn't pity him. She chose him. Slowly, he reached for her hand. His fingers trembled slightly, as if afraid she might pull away. But she didn't. She held his hand tightly, grounding him. "I've been running from something that already feels like home," he said quietly. "I was just too scared to admit it." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. "Then stop running." He let out a shaky breath, relief washing over him. "I thought love at my age was something that only lived in memory," he said. "You made me realize it still exists." Emily squeezed his hand. "Love doesn't expire, Daniel. It just waits for the right person." For the first time, he smiled, fully no hesitation, no doubt. The years, the fears, the walls he'd built around his heart all seemed to fade. There was only her, standing there with honesty and warmth, proving that love didn't care about numbers. They sat together on the couch, the silence between them no longer heavy but peaceful. The evening light slipped through the window, painting soft gold across the room. Daniel poured them both a cup of tea, the simple gesture feeling almost sacred. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know what comes next." She smiled gently. "Then we figure it out together, one day at a time." He nodded, looking at her as if he were memorizing her face. "I never thought someone like you could want someone like me." "Then you've been underestimating yourself," she said with a playful smile. "And me." They both laughed softly, the tension finally breaking. It wasn't dramatic or rushed, it was quiet and real. It's the way true love often begins. Later that night, they stepped outside onto his porch. The rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and fresh. The city lights shimmered below, and for a while they just stood there in silence, holding hands. Daniel spoke first. "You know, I used to think my best years were behind me. But maybe they're just beginning." Emily looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's because you stopped looking back." He smiled, turning toward her. "You make it sound so simple." "It is," she said, "when it's real." There was no need for more words. In that quiet night, everything between them finally made sense. The doubts that had once filled his heart were replaced by peace. For the first time in years, Daniel felt free, not because the years had changed, but because love had finally found him where he was. As the evening turned to night, Emily rested her head on his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her, still amazed she was there. It wasn't a fairy tale moment, it was something better. It was truth, raw and unfiltered, built not on perfection but on choice. She whispered softly, "You thought I wouldn't want you because of your age, but you were wrong." He smiled, eyes glistening with emotion. "I'm glad I was." They stayed like that, not speaking, just existing together, to people who had stopped letting fear write their story. The age gap hadn't disappeared, but it no longer mattered. What mattered was that they had found each other at the right time, in the right way. That night, as Emily drove home, her heart felt light for the first time in months. She knew their story wouldn't be perfect, but it would be theirs, real, tender, and lasting. And as Daniel watched her car disappear into the quiet street, he whispered to himself, "Maybe love doesn't come when you're ready. Maybe it comes when you finally stop doubting you deserve it." He closed the door, feeling peace settle over him. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Because now he knew love had no deadline, no age, no rules. It simply asked for courage. And finally, he had found his.